Hi, everyone. So yes, I'm European, so it's Vonage. Guillaume Callot. So Vonage is a partner of AWS, obviously, and what we do basically is to provide APIs to developers, about 1.6 million developers, or 100,000 different enterprises, so that they can either communication enable or make their application network aware. So what that means is pretty broad, right? It's a lot of different type of use cases you can do with that. But in your personal life, you probably use Vonage every day without knowing it. When you log in Amazon.com, you use Vonage, or Vonage. When you call your Uber driver, you use Vonage. When you make a video call with your doctor, you use Vonage. So we power those platforms on those applications with those embedded communication APIs. And our job is to make it extremely easy for developers to use those very powerful capabilities. So today we are not going to talk about many different types of use cases, but about one very important niche, which is the financial services industry, on how we help them to fight against a threat that is called authorized push payment. So what is authorized push payment, and does it matter to you? Well, authorized push payment is what everybody would call a scam. Authorized push payment is basically usually a very sophisticated scenario where someone is driven to make a financial transfer influenced by a scammer. So when your grandmother receives a phone call of someone who pretends to be her banker, and that she makes a payment, she makes a transfer against her will somehow, that's what it is about. And this problem is, of course, an issue for businesses, but it's an issue for all of us. How many of you have received in their life phishing, smishing, vishing, so different type of scam attempts? Well, don't bother, I know all of you. And myself, in my family, just a couple of weeks ago, my wife she booked an hotel, and just a few days later, she received an email from a very popular booking platforms reminding her about her booking. You have booked an hotel at this place from this date, etc. On just asking to make a phone call to confirm the payment method. It looked absolutely authentic. And she did that. And it was a scam. How did we know that? We got really lucky. This booking platform sent us an email, a real one this time, telling us we have been hacked. Your data have been leaked, and we believe that there are some malicious use of your data at the moment happening. And my wife said, that's bizarre, let me check again that email I received. And when she looked into the little detail, the URL, the email sender, then she realized, oh my God, I got scammed. So you can imagine the consequences it had for us, because we had to cancel the credit card, go to the bank, lots of pain points. Hopefully we didn't lose any money, but it's very painful. And what has been the most frustrating for my wife is that she works in IT. She works for a big tech company, I won't give any names, and she realized that she got scammed. And the reason why she got scammed is not because she does not know technology, it's because she got the trust, the scammer bought her trust, because it was contextual, it was personalized, and because there was a data theft that was a premise to that problem. So this problem of authorized push payment is taking really big scale, and I'm going to share a couple of statistics from the industry that certainly will relate to you. So it's no surprise that fraud protection is #1 tech investment in FSI at the moment. And the typical fraud we are talking about are bank account fraud, data computer hacking, identity theft, shopping fraud. All of this is part of the challenge that the institutions are facing. On here are some numbers that certainly will give you the order of magnitude of what we are talking about. 26% of American adults have experienced banking or credit fraud in their life. Maybe you are, I'm one of them. Maybe you are one of them as well. FTC reports that year-over-year growth of this kind of fraud is 14% year-over-year, reaching about 10 billion of losses for the financial institution. On another really important metric is the real cost of fraud. When the fraudster steals $1, the cost for the financial institution can be in the range of $4 to $5 for each, because of all the complexity of the fees, the refunds, the fines, the investigations. And even in some countries, like UK, there are regulations that are protecting the consumers, where the bank has to refund those payments, at least 50% of those payments. So it's a real big problem. So let's unpack that a little bit more. What are really the scenario and the threats we are trying to defend against? And here I'm going to use a lingo that is a bit more specific to that industry. So we are talking about phishing, smishing, vishing, all kind of scams using a communication channel, account takeover, when someone is able to receive the one-time password SMS on your behalf and take over your account, a classical attack. Also, card not present, typically when you make a payment just with a credit card number and you are not able to authenticate the user, classic. And also something that is taking big proportion at the moment is synthetic identity, where you have bots creating fake accounts in order to do lots of bad things, like inflated traffic or different type of massive attack. So we have worked, Vonage has worked with all these FSI companies and figured out what we believe was the right response to that problem. The problem usually comes from fragmentation. When you look at the customer journey you have to fulfill to defend against fraud, you have to stitch together a lot of data, a lot of context from heterogeneous systems. And usually that's between those systems that the breaches or the vulnerabilities appear. So our approach is that we want to help FSI to bring together the transactional data, the communication data, and bring them, because that's lots of data, under AI control. That's the general mindset. And the features that we combine together for that purpose belong to 4 main categories. The first are what we call branded communication, the ability to know exactly who you talk to for real. I'm talking to my real banker. I want to trust that. Second is what is pretty well known, the multi-factor authentication. You want to combine who you are, what you own, where you are, into a cohesive way so that you can maximize the chances of making the right decision. Know your customer, registration of users, collecting data in a compliant way, extremely important. And finally, and maybe even more important than all the 3 together, it's the ability to react. Because fraud is not, defending against fraud is not once and done. You always have evolving threats, evolving systems. And you need to make sure that AI is here to control, provide alarms, even if if there are some false detection, it's okay. You still need to be alerted if something goes wrong. You need to be able to react to those issues. So Vonage, as I said, we are in the space of communication on networks. We are an affiliate of Ericsson. We got acquired by Ericsson about 3 years ago now. And we built a solution with AWS that is really building on our strength. On what is it that we do well? 4 things. First, we are omni-channel. As I said, customer journey are a multiplicity of things, multiple type of channels, voice, SMS, email, multiple capabilities. So protecting against fraud fundamentally builds on top of that. Second is user experience. Defending against fraud must make sure that the user really is part of the solution. So having a solution that leaves aside the user and is not convenient is a big risk of not being used. Who is fond of one-time password on SMS? Who loves it here? Right? I'm sure you use it multiple times a day. It's not super convenient. We can do better, right? So designing the user experience is super important. Also, and that's certainly one of the core topic of today, is network insights. Vonage, on Ericsson, we work with hundreds of telcos in the world. We have access to data that live in the network. We have access to APIs in these networks so that we can be aware of the communications that are happening there, of the location, of the device identity, the status of the devices, the resources of the network, so that we can also make those signals part of the decision-making on fraud. And finally, AI. All those data, this treasure trove of data, is nothing if you are not able to make it actionable. So AI is fundamental here. So how do we work with FSI organization on helping them to resolve the problem? The first is we need to map their customer journeys. The way you are going to analyze fraud at the moment of a registration is not the same thing as at the moment of an engagement with the contact center, for example, is not the same as the moment where you are doing a transaction. So first you need to be aware, context aware, where you are in the journey. The second part is about the orchestration of all those modalities, and that's where our platform comes in. We bring together all the different channels, numbers, voice, video, SMS, MMS, RCS, you name it. And the last layer is the AI/ML capability that sit on top, that, let's say, oversee the correct execution of all those workflows. That's the general principle. I'm not going to go in the detail of each capability of our product. We have different APIs for different type of usage. One of them that I like a lot is called number verification. Number verification is the ability to authenticate the device natively using the SIM card without requiring to send an OTP over SMS. We'll talk about it in a minute. There is also another one very important called RCS, Rich Communication Services. It's a technology that is not that recent. It came many years ago, about 20 years ago it was invented, but now it's mature. It's supported by iOS and Android devices, and it allows brands to send messages in a branded way, in a trusted way. That's extremely important. And finally, something we've done, obviously, with the help of Amazon is to integrate AI capability in that suite, like Amazon Bedrock on Amazon Recognition for liveness on the facial recognition. So to make it real, I have some little example of use cases that hopefully going to relate to your daily life. So the first one is what we call branded calling. So when you receive a phone call from a brand, whoever it is, if you are lucky, and depending where you live, you may receive a little signal saying, maybe it's spam. Not everywhere, it's not totally reliable, but it helps. But very often it's not enough. Especially if the person that calls you or leaves you a message, as in my personal example earlier, gives very contextual information about you. Because it looks absolutely genuine, and you will call him back. And that's where you are at risk. This use case of branded calling is basically providing the ability to embed into the mobile app of the bank a native communication feature that is completely branded. You know for sure that it is really your bank calling you. You know even the reason of that call, so you can relate to maybe something you've done in the morning. It's contextual, and it's absolutely, let's say, 100% safeguard. It's very reliable because it's encrypted. And it works both ways. The user is also authenticated by the brand as well. So that's part of the technology stack we offer. I'm just going to mention a customer of ours that implemented this. It's in Australia. We've done this with a partnership with Optus, a local telco. And the bank, called Westpac, was extremely conscious of the challenges of authorized push payment, and they are deploying that use case at the moment. I encourage you to have a look at the press release that they have made with us. Very interesting testimonial of their CEO. And it's a CEO-led initiative because you can see how important it is for banks to drive that kind of use cases. Another use case, maybe more classical, is multi-factor authentication. The product that we sell here is called Verify. It's an API that allows developer to automatically, let's say, have the authentication across multiple type of channels. So SMS, yes, but also WhatsApp, voice, email, and something I'm going to present in a second, this new API based on 5G that allows a secure authentication of the user. So this is what we call number verification. The value of that use case is that basically it's completely transparent for the user. The app running on the phone can know with full certainty that it's running on the genuine SIM card and phone number of the user. No need to send an SMS to check it out. It's a new generation of API that telcos are rolling out at the moment. It's very powerful. It raises a lot of expectation of that industry. But as I said, it's one of the capability in the arsenal. There is another thing we are working on. It's location. When you correlate the authentication of the user plus the location of a transaction, you can protect even more from fraud in this case. And here is an example of a customer of ours that is using these Verify services. It's called Remitly. Remitly is a remittance service. If you are in the US or Canada, and you have family abroad in LATAM, in APAC, in Africa, you can send money. You can imagine how sensitive these kind of transactions are. You don't want your life savings to be going to fraudsters. So we have worked with this company to make this extremely robust and secure. The last use case I want to talk about, and that will connect everything together, is the ability to score in real time the probability of fraud. So as I said at the beginning, you are never once and done with fraud. You always have a risk of detecting something that was not expected. So you need to monitor what's happening in your communication and transaction. So this is where AI comes into play. We have worked with AWS to combine our suite with Amazon Bedrock in order to look for those signals, to look for those behaviors that are a signal of fraud. Of course, you need to bring together lots of different types of data. The number can be suspicious, but for example, you want to know if someone has swapped his SIM card. If someone has swapped his SIM card recently, it could be a signal that maybe someone is trying to hijack his phone number. You have the same type of signal related to location. So writing a rule, if then else, does not do the job. When you do AI, you are more looking for patterns that are signaling you that there is a behavior that is a risk of fraud. So that's what we have built on the general functional architecture of this solution is basically building on top of our platform, so what we call our fraud protection solution. On this fraud protection solution, dialogues in real time with Amazon Bedrock in order to exchange data, but also get a score on get an explanation of why we believe that this transaction or that registration is suspicious. Very important to make that, let's say, a constant training loop. So more customer logos. As you can see, it's not just in financial services. We work with the institution in e-commerce, in healthcare, in insurance. And all these customers have very similar problem to solve. And that's using the capabilities I've just explained. So why we believe it's the right way to try to approach these problems is, first, it's helping developers to make it easy. You can imagine the complexity of bringing together communication, transactions together on AI. Using one API platform like ours allows this to make it really easy for developers. Second is, as I said at the beginning, improving customer experience is absolutely key. If the user is left behind, no chance you're going to improve your security. And finally, real-time insights also is a fundamental attribute you need to consider. So if you want to know more, I encourage you to do two things. First, we have produced, with the help of AWS, a white paper with Finextra that gives you a full blueprint, if you want, on how to implement successfully AI to solve this kind of fraud problems in the banking sector. And if you want to see some demos, please join us on our booth, Partner Pavilion 219, so just on the opposite side. The QR code here will bring you to a page where you can have the white paper and some other material. All right. So thank you for your attention, and see you soon.